The supposed recovery lost steam in second quarter. The recovery lost momentum in the spring as growth slowed to a 2.4% pace, its most sluggish showing in nearly a year, and way too weak to drive down unemployment. Consumers spent less. Companies slowed the restocking of shelves. The nation's trade deficit dragged more on the economy in the April to June quarter. In a separate report, the Commerce Department said the recession was deeper than previously estimated. And here's a question: what are we recovering from exactly? Together, the reports raised doubts about whether employers will hire enough and consumers will spend enough to invigorate the economy. As unemployment remains near double digits, Congress could feel pressure to pass more stimulus measures to speed the recovery. So far, Republicans and some Democrats have blocked additional spending because of their concerns about the size of the huge deficit. Investors have reacted to the report with disappointment. Commerce Department report released Friday did offer some encouraging news. Businesses invest the most in 13 years on equipment and software during the second quarter. For the first time in 2 years, builders boosted spending on commercial projects, and home builders spent the most in 27 years, although many expect that to simply fade now that government home buying tax credits have expired. The recovery has been losing power for 2 straight quarters, and that raises concerns about whether it will fizzle out, or worse, tip back into a double-dip recession. White House Economic Advisor Christina Romer said on Friday the first half growth rate of more than 3% shows the steady recovery from the recession. However, she said faster growth is needed to spur substantial improvement in employment, and much work is still to be done before the U.S. economy is fully recovered. Again, what exactly are we supposed to be recovering from? Things are changing, and things have already changed. The economy began to grow in the third quarter of last year after having suffered the worst recession since the Great Depression. And in the following quarter, the economy's growth surged at a 5% pace, the high water mark of the supposed rebound. Of course, much of the expansion was driven by the government's massive $862 billion stimulus package of tax cuts and increased spending. So, what happens when that goes away? Also, companies helped energize growth with a burst of spending to replenish inventories that were cut down during the recession. So now, as those forces are fading, concerns are growing as to whether the private sector can boost spending and investment enough to keep the recovery afloat. Consumer spending, usually the lifeblood of economic activity, slowed down in the second quarter. Such spending rose at a very slow 1.6% pace. That was down from a 1.9% pace in the first quarter and was the weakest showing since the end of last year. The 2.4% growth rate logged in the April to June quarter was the weakest since a 1.6% pace in the third quarter of last year, when a record streak of 4 straight losing quarters came to an end. The economy is growing, but not enough to make most Americans happy. At this very weak pace, it will take more time than many hoped for. In the revisions issued Friday, the government estimated that the economy shrank 2.6% last year, the steepest drop since 1946. That's worse than the 2.4% decline originally estimated. The economy's plunge underscores why the unemployment rate surged to 10.1% in October, a 26-year high. With the economy growing at a subpar speed, the current 9.5% unemployment rate is not expected to fall. It takes about 3% growth in gross domestic product just to create enough jobs to keep pace with the population increase. Growth would have to equal at least 5% for a full year to drive the unemployment rate down by 1 percentage point. Neither the Obama administration nor the Federal Reserve expect that to happen. Gross domestic product measures the value of all goods and services, from machinery to manicures, produced within the United States. It is the best gauge of the nation's economic health, so they say. The weak economy leaves Democrats and Republicans on Capitol Hill vulnerable as they head into the November midterm elections. Democrats, who now control both chambers, have the most to lose. The gloomier outlook is also a liability for President Barack Obama. Spending by businesses on equipment and software increased at a 21.9% pace in the second quarter. Builders boosted spending on commercial projects, such as office buildings and plants, at a 5.2% pace. And home builders who have cut spending for the last 2 quarters ratcheted up their outlays at a 27.9% pace, the most in nearly 27 years. But still, with the expiration of the government's homebuyer tax credit, housing activity has started to turn very sluggish again. So in other words, that will go back down again. So looking ahead though, businesses still aren't showing signs of ramping up spending that would translate into the explosive kind of growth needed to drive down unemployment. So uncertain about the strength of the recovery, companies are sitting on record piles of cash, loath to use the money to hire new workers and expand operations. There is a high degree of uncertainty. There is supposedly a small recovery underway. It is going to be very choppy. Overall economic growth was bolstered somewhat in the second quarter by strong spending by the federal government. So, what happens when the federal government doesn't spend? What happens when the stimulus fades away, which it already is? And now if there's no more taxpayer credits for home buying, what happens to the home builders? Could there be a double-dip recession on the way? And when they stand up, they fall back down again. Yes, these times are different. There's never been times like these before, and there'll never be times like these again. In other words, everything that must change quickly or rapidly, and yes, for the better. And again, Ezekiel chapter 33. Again, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, 2, Son of man, speak to the children of thy people, and say unto them, when I bring the weapon upon a land, that the people of the land of the nation take a man of their coasts, or out of their country, and set him for their watchman. 3, if, when he sees the weapon come upon the land, he blows the trumpet, and warns the people. 4, then whosoever hears the sound of the trumpet, and takes not warning, if the weapon come and take him away, his blood shall be upon his own head. 5, he heard the sound of the trumpet, or the warning, and took not the warning. His blood shall be upon him. But he that takes warning shall deliver his soul. 6, but if the watchman sees the weapon come, and blows not the trumpet or the warning, and the people be not warned, if the weapon come and take any person from among them, he is taken away in his iniquity, but his blood will I require at the watchman's hand. 7, so thou, O son of man, I have set thee as a watchman. Therefore thou shalt hear the word of my mouth, and warn them from me. All these are more signs